What if Anakin and Padme fled the Empire to raise their family? Would Palpatine find them? What would Obi-Wan and Yoda do? Would Padme forgive Anakin? Watch this what if story to find out. Let's start the story on Mustafar. Padme runs off her ship to hug Anakin. She pleads with him to come back to her, that there is redemption for what he has done. But Anakin tells her he can't. The dark side is the only way to save her, and he cannot let her die. But Padme pleads with Anakin to come away with her, help her raise their child. They can leave it all behind. There is still good in him, she knows there is, and they can walk the path towards it together. Anakin's hands come up, but they don't embrace her. They grip her shoulders, holding her at a distance. He told Padme, he can't. Doesn't she see? He's gone too far. The dark side, it's the only way. The power to stop death, to save her, will be his. Save her from what? Padme demands, tears cutting lines through the ash on her cheeks. She tells Anakin to look at her. She is not dying. Their child is not killing her, but she is afraid. She's grieving. She is in pain because the man she loves is slipping away. Anakin says that Palpatine promised, but Padme interrupts, shouting that Palpatine lied. He has manipulated Anakin from the very beginning. He is the Sith Lord. He orchestrated the war, turned him against his friends, the Jedi, and himself. The empire he's building is a prison for the galaxy, and he's made Anakin its first prisoner. He stumbled back, as if struck by a blade. The logic, the truth, begins to crack. He mutters, I did it for you, but Padme rebuts, yelling that he's fought for a tyrant. He has hurt the innocent, and he has killed younglings. That is not a man she can love. That is not the father of her child. The words hit Anakin, the yellow in his eyes flickering. But Padme continues, that the man she loves is still beneath. The man who wanted to free slaves, who cared about everyone he loves. That man is her husband. That man can be redeemed. Not through power, not through more pain, but by choosing to walk away right now. Anakin's gaze lowers until we're locked again with Padme. He tells her that he'll find them. The Emperor is too powerful. He will sense them, and he'll never let them go. But Padme tells Anakin they will hide. They will go to the farthest rim. They will live simply, quietly, not as Jedi and a senator, but as a family. She takes both Anakin's mechanical and organic hand in hers, and yells that she cannot forgive him, not yet. The things he has done. Forgiveness is a long road, but she can stand by him as he walks it. They can find redemption together. He must choose his family over the Empire, Sith, and dark side. For a long moment, there was only the roars of Mustafar, the fire reflecting in his eyes, and the towering figure of Darth Vader. The Emperor's fist began to crumble. In its place stood Anakin Skywalker. His shoulders slump, and the yellow evaporates from his eyes, leaving the familiar blue that Padme loved. He tells Padme that he doesn't deserve her, but she smiles back, telling her husband that isn't his decision to make. They board her ship and enter hyperspace. They exit hyperspace with their destination in view, Salucami, a remote farming world in the Outer Rim. Anakin learned of this planet during the Clone War, when they discovered Clone Cut had deserted the war and started a family here, the perfect place to hide. As they land their ship, Anakin thinks about what he's doing, and looks over to his wife, knowing it doesn't matter as long as he's with her. Meanwhile, in the Senate chambers, Yoda loses to Palpatine and groups up with Bail and Obi-Wan on Polis Massa. They had lost their chance to take out Palpatine, and now security on Coruscant would be too tight to make a move, and they wouldn't get a second shot. They discuss what to do, almost certain now that Palpatine will consolidate his power and establish galactic control. If they were to fight back, it would not be quick. It could take years, decades, but Yoda and Obi-Wan are faithful that the Jedi Order will prevail. They have to. Instead of hiding like in the original timeline, Obi-Wan and Yoda will take an active role in the post-Order 66 galaxy, searching for surviving Jedi to rebuild their forces. Meanwhile, they tell Bail it's important for him to stay in the Senate. He'll be the link between them and what's going on in the Empire, but he must remain free of suspicion to keep his place in the Empire, and in time, they will meet again to fight back against the Emperor. Meanwhile, in the coming days, Anakin and Padme establish themselves on Salucami. Anakin's nerves were at an all-time high, as Padme's birth would be upon them any day now, and he still ponders with the fact of whether he made the right choice. Should he have stayed by Palpatine's side to further himself in the dark side, or is he strong enough in the Force as he is? It will all be revealed soon. Padme felt it one evening as her water broke and Anakin sensed that the moment was upon them. Salucami wasn't known for their top-of-the-line medical facilities, and Anakin knew in their solemn wooden hut that he had built that they were on their own. Labor began as Anakin focused on the Force, channeling it into Padme. He connected to the richness stronger than he ever had before, and he waited for the moment he felt he was losing Padme, the moment it would all go wrong. But it never came, and after hours, finally baby Luke came first, and what surprised Anakin was that there was another baby Leia Skywalker. Anakin looked upon his children for the first time, and he was struck by an epiphany that would change his life. His nightmares were wrong. He never needed the power to save her. She was going to survive. And ultimately, he never needed to turn on the Jedi and join the dark side. The realization hit Anakin like a star destroyer, and he was overwhelmed with an intense guilt. Everything he had done, everyone he had killed, the younglings, Mace Windu, was for nothing. He should have stayed faithful to the Jedi and trusted in the Force, but in the end, he gave into his fear and was manipulated by the Sith, which is exactly what Yoda had warned him about his entire life. He broke down in tears, Padme hugging Anakin, trying to console him, as she knew the mental turmoil he was going through. She told him it's going to be okay, that they can leave the past behind and focus on their family. Anakin looked at his children once again, and knew what the path forward was from here. They needed to cut themselves off from the galaxy, and remain here on Salucami, so he could raise his family alongside Padme, the love of his life, and he was done with galactic affairs. The first few years of Anakin and Padme's solitude was calm. They sold off their ship for credits, and were able to purchase a secluded plot of land, and some nerf and seeds to set up their farm so they could sustain themselves. Anakin built a small wooden hut with 3 rooms, one for the nursery for the twins. The closest town was a 15-minute speeder ride away, and they knew this was the right time to remain as hidden as possible. Anakin put his lightsaber and Jedi robes under one of the floorboards, and never believed he would use them again. In the quiet rhythm of their new life, Anakin and Padme found a peace they had never known. Anakin tended to the small herd of Nerf, their stubborn nature a familiar challenge, drawing water and mending fences with his mechanical hands, whilst the twins rolled through the tall grass. Padme cultivated a vibrant garden behind their hut, growing vegetables and sweet melons from the Salucami ground. Their days were a cycle of simple, and their evenings filled with the sounds of their children's laughter. Padme found she could forgive Anakin for what he had done. His path to redemption was not marked by grand deeds, but by the quiet love he poured into his family. Meanwhile, around the galaxy, in the years following the beginning of the Empire, Yoda and Obi-Wan were very active, searching for any surviving Jedi they could find. They set up their base on Dagobah, attempting to use the dark side nature of the planet to hide the light side presence as they accumulate their numbers. They were fairly successful and found key masters such as Oppo Rancisis, Quinlan Vos, and Rowan Shine. Bail was helping them in the Senate, accumulating support as well as funds for their eventual rebel cause. The Jedi asked him regularly if they heard any word of Padme and Anakin, but there was nothing. The Empire proclaimed that Skywalker was killed during Order 66, but they knew that Anakin had helped Palpatine execute the Order, but then he fell off the face of the galaxy. Did Palpatine discard him after the Jedi were executed, or did Anakin escape? But what about Padme and her child, Anakin's child? Too many unanswered questions that kept Obi-Wan up late at night. Hey guys, before we continue the video, I'd like to announce a flash sale we're doing for our most popular deluxe sabers at Fantasy Sabers: the Chosen One, the Sun, the Negotiator, and Dark Father. These are discounted to $149, the lowest price they have ever been, and will never return to this price. We offer the best sabers on the market with premium build quality and insane effects, as well as the most affordable sabers out there. Spend over $299 and we'll chuck in a mystery saber for free. Don't miss out, this is a short sale that ends on the 12th of February. 15 years later, 40-year-old Anakin Skywalker woke up as he normally did, kissed his wife on the cheek, and went straight to feed and milk the Nerf, whilst Padme started boiling water and getting breakfast ready. One by one their children came out of their rooms: Luke, Leia, and finally a third child, a boy named Qui-Gon. They eat their breakfast together, and then like every morning, they began their training in the Force. Anakin stood in the quiet dawn light of the paddock, watching his children settle into their meditation. He tells them, the Force is not a tool, but a current, to let it flow through you and around you. Feel the life of the nerf, the grass, each other. Leia's focus was sharp and immediate. Luke's presence was a gentle, unwavering warmth, and Qui-Gon sitting between them was feeling the force of his siblings. After their training, they practiced combat with wooden sticks. When they were 16, Anakin had taken them to Ilum, the first time they had left the planet, to get their own kyber crystals to create their lightsabers, but they had never actually used them, and rarely trained with them for risk of revealing themselves. Instead, Anakin trained them through different lightsaber forms with a wooden stick, and after years of this, they had mastered all different styles. Anakin's children were extremely strong in the Force, their connection rivaling his own sometimes. He was tentative about teaching them about the Force, but knew if he didn't, they would be open and susceptible to the dark side as he once was. He needed to ensure that would not happen. Anakin continued his own training, mainly through meditation, as his connection to the cosmic force became richer over time, but he still hadn't touched his Jedi robes or lightsaber. He was happy with their life, surrounded by family, and they all got on amazingly. However, the day they were dreading finally came, the day when the Empire would come to Salucami. The Star Destroyers were visible over the planet, a show of force, as ground troops were sent to the planet's surface to explain Imperial occupation. Anakin and Padme thought they would be okay, since they were 15 minutes from any town, and no one else lived near them. However, 2 Imperial officers came on their speeder bikes and approached the Skywalker residence. They knocked, and the Skywalkers answered. The first officer explained to Anakin and Padme that from here on out, they would need to pay a service tax to the Empire, 20% of everything they earn and produce per month. Anakin told the officer they accepted and would comply with whatever the Empire wanted. But secretly, Anakin was concerned. The Empire had never made it this far, and it put their identity at risk. The officers left, and Luke asked Anakin and Padme what this means for them now, and Anakin looked at Padme and back at his kids, telling them he's not sure, but the Force will guide their path forward. However, something they didn't expect is that one of the Imperial officers recognized Anakin. He was 35 years old, and recognized Anakin as the hero with no fear from the Clone War. As a kid, he was a huge fan of the Jedi, and of course his favorite was Anakin Skywalker, and no doubt in his mind did he believe this rogue farmer on Salucami was him. The resemblance was undeniable, and he knew he must have found the hidden Jedi. In the Imperial records, Anakin was dead. However, he now knew this must have been a cover-up. He reported to his superior, the governor, that had been newly placed in charge of Salucami and the surrounding sector. The governor thought about this. The information could be wrong, but if it was right and he didn't report it, and it later came to light that it really was Anakin and that he knew, he would be in real trouble. There was no harm, and he reported it to Tarkin immediately. He told the Grand Moff of the report that one of his officers reported that they had found the Jedi Anakin Skywalker in the countryside of Salucami with the lost Senator Padme Amidala. Tarkin couldn't believe it. This was the last thing he expected to hear from a low-level Outer Rim governor. He knew the disappearance of Anakin and Padme had always annoyed and confused the Emperor, so if he was the one to provide him with Skywalker, the reward would be insurmountable. He contacted the Emperor immediately, and he told Sidious that Skywalker had been spotted on Salucami. Sidious couldn't believe it. After all these years, has Skywalker really been found? He asked Tarkin about the officer who found him, and told him he was a huge fan of Skywalker from when he was a child, and he said that the face was indistinguishable, and about the same age he would be now. Sidious thought about it. It could be plausible. Salucami was an extremely secluded planet. They could have hid there without seeing another being all this time. But what worried him is his children. If Anakin is alive, that means his children were also, who would be extremely strong in the Force and would have the power to challenge him. His best course of action was to take them out. He tells Tarkin to mobilize the Death Star to Salucami and destroy it immediately. It is of little consequence, and if they are wrong, the loss of Salucami will not make a dent to the Empire. Tarkin nods and ends the transmission. He is on the Death Star, and commands the bridge to enter hyperspace to go to Salucami immediately. Anakin and his children sense it straight away. Over 1 million beings enter the solar system in an instant. Is it a fleet of starships? What could it be? Anakin rushes inside to his scanner to see that it's only one ship has exited hyperspace. That can't be right, and he feels something is wrong in the Force. He calls to his family and tells them it's time to leave. They gather all their personal belongings and rush to their ship, hidden in the forest close by. They all enter as they can see it now in the sky, a massive circular orbital space station, the size of a moon. Anakin roars the engines to life and takes off, shooting for space. It's going to be tight. The Death Star is charging up. They exit the atmosphere as they look over at the Death Star charging up and ultimately fire a green bolt at Salucami, going directly through the planet's core, shattering the rock to pieces. Anakin and his family couldn't believe it. The Empire had the power to destroy planets? Padme turns to tell Anakin it must have been that officer, that he must have recognized him and reported it, and it eventually got back to Palpatine. Padme puts her hand on his shoulder and tells Anakin, this is Sidious's doing. He wouldn't care about a planet being destroyed at the chance to take out a threat like Anakin. Everyone they knew on Salucami, all their friends they have made in the last 20 years, dead in the blink of an eye. Padme tells Anakin she believes it's time they told their children the truth as she looks back at the three of them, shielded their entire lives from the horrors of the galaxy, the horrors of Anakin's past, and they only knew about the Empire, but not what had formed it. He set the ship to autopilot as he and Padme walked towards their children. Anakin sat down and told them it's time they learned the truth about everything. His children leaned in, eager to listen to the stories Anakin had to tell. He told them everything from his past as a slave, leaving Tatooine, and his mother to join the Jedi, training under his master Obi-Wan, marrying Padme, the Clone War, and ultimately the fall of the Republic and Jedi Order, as well as the role he played in it, but ended with how Padme saved him in the end, and they ran away from the galaxy to raise their family. His children couldn't believe it. The story started happily, continuing with Anakin's time in the Clone War as a hero, but they couldn't believe what he had done at the end of it, purging the Jedi, even the younglings. But they understood as Anakin explained the dangers of the dark side, how he was manipulated by Sidious, the greatest manipulator the galaxy has ever seen, and only his wife saved him, pulled him back from the brink of destruction. Luke speaks up and tells them that if the Empire has the power to destroy planets and the Sith are in control, that they have to fight. Anakin tells him it's not that easy, but Leia says they have to do something. They cannot stand by and let the Empire continue their tirade around the galaxy. Qui-Gon spoke next, telling his father that it's their destiny, just as much as his. Maybe he alone wasn't the chosen one, but maybe their entire Skywalker family. Anakin thought about this and looked at Padme. The future he had feared would come had arrived, but he knew it was the right thing to do. They had to get involved, and they needed to defeat Palpatine once and for all. Meanwhile, around the galaxy, the resurgent Jedi Order, alongside the Rebel Alliance, was in open rebellion and war with the Empire. There were over 100 Jedi alive, under the leadership of Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Ahsoka Tano, alongside the leaders of the Rebel Council, Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, Garmbao Iblis, and Hera Syndulla. The war around the galaxy was destructive. The Rebels and Jedi spent 17 years building their forces, until they openly declared war on Emperor Palpatine. The Empire has destroyed 15 planets in search of the Rebel base. However, they were still secretly hidden on Dagobah, and they had amassed a massive fleet of dreadnoughts and ships to fight back. Anakin and Padme got up to speed with the state of the galaxy through the HoloNet, and they knew they needed to recoup with the Rebel Alliance. Anakin wondered how he would be received, as no doubt they knew what he had done. They didn't know where to start, but Anakin had an idea. He got out his Jedi robes and lightsaber that he grabbed before Salucami's destruction. He laid them out on the table and put his hand on them. He reached out with the Force, searching for answers, the truth, as the Force showed him a planet, Dagobah, and he knew that's where the rebels must be. They go to the Dagobah system and exit hyperspace, but they weren't prepared for the situation they found themselves in. The Empire was here, in all-out war with the Rebel Alliance. They watched the battle, Star Destroyers firing off against rebel dreadnoughts, TIE fighters versus the rebels' X and Y wings, but Anakin sees it in the distance, the Death Star, and it was approaching. However, Anakin also feels something stronger. He feels it. He's here, Palpatine, and his presence in the dark side is not alone. Anakin's family joins the fray, Anakin piloting their ship towards the battlefield. Meanwhile, Padme boards and pilots their secondary ship to detach from them and makes her way to the rebel command ship on the outskirts of the battle. Anakin flies into the battlefield, taking out TIE fighters, dodging attacks from Star Destroyers. Meanwhile, in the distance, he can see the tens of single-man Jedi fighters making their way to the Death Star. Anakin joined them, and they lined up, dodging blaster fire as the Jedi watch Anakin's ship, all sensing those inside were strong in the Force, but they didn't know who they were. Obi-Wan tried reaching out with his communications, but they all failed. But nonetheless, they were helping them, so must be their allies. They all made their way onto the Death Star. Obi-Wan, Quinlan Vos, Ahsoka, and many more Jedi landed their ships. They exited to defeat the stormtroopers in the hangar, and turned to see who would come out of the unknown ship who had joined them, and they never expected who it would be. First came Anakin, followed by his 3 children, and the look on the face of Obi-Wan and Ahsoka was one of disbelief. They rushed forward. Obi-Wan looked Anakin up and down, saying, "He's alive," as Ahsoka went in to hug him. But Anakin spoke, telling them there is no time. They only have one opportunity, and they must take advantage of it. Palpatine is not alone. He has Darksiders with him, but he's brought his children to help. Ahsoka and Obi-Wan look over Anakin's shoulder to see Luke, Leia, and Qui-Gon, all with the look of youth and determination on their faces. Together, the Jedi make their way through the corridors towards the Emperor's throne room. Anakin leads the charge as they take out stormtroopers and carve their way through the Durasteel doors. But nothing could stop the Skywalker family, as all the Jedi break down the throne room door to see Sidious sitting in his throne. Sidious stands and calls out to Anakin, "So the lost child lives. Have you come to stand by my side once again?" But Skywalker yells back and tells the Emperor, never, that he's here to remedy the mistakes of his past. But Sidious laughs at him and tells him it might not be that easy. To Sidious's side, out came 5 Darkseid users, members of the Sith species that were forged from the dark side. Anakin could sense they were extremely strong in the dark side, and maybe this wasn't going to be as easy as he thought. Anakin charged as Palpatine cast Sith lightning at the group. Anakin jumped over it, whilst many of the Jedi were hit in the room. He ignited his lightsaber and flung it at Palpatine, whilst the Sith Lord brought his up to block. Anakin pushed forward with murderous intent, whilst Palpatine carefully dodged the onslaught. Anakin was powerful, far stronger than he remembered. Meanwhile, Luke and Leia and Qui-Gon rushed at the Sith warriors in the room. They'd never fought real opponents before, but they had trained against Anakin their entire lives, who was far stronger than any opponent could be. They were fast, nimble, and overall outmatched the Sith. Luke struck first, cutting across one of the male warriors, causing him to drop his blade and fall, whilst Leia plunged and thrust her saber through the chest cavity of the lead female. Obi-Wan watched in awe at the strength of the Skywalker children. They were extremely powerful, stronger than even Anakin was the last time he saw him, and knew these must be the kids of the Chosen One. Meanwhile, Anakin and Palpatine continued their standoff, but they put their blades away as Palpatine cast Sith lightning at Anakin, who was blocking with a Force barrier. But Anakin sent a counterattack, blasting Palpatine with a ray of Force light, sending the Sith flying back and scorching his robes. Anakin jumped, lightsaber ignited, ready to deal the final blow, but instead, Palpatine muttered a small spell under his breath as blue fire soared from his fingertips, and Anakin was forced to cut off his attack. Anakin put the blade away and decided to catch the fire. He could sense it was meant to burn him, but he was immune to such primitive attacks. Instead, Anakin sent another bolt of Force light, which cut through the fire and hit Palpatine directly in the chest again, who cut off the fire and ignited his blade. He was frustrated now, but he would use it to power him. Anakin was upon him again, as they clashed blades at tremendous speeds. Sidious ignited another, but Anakin dodged and weaved out of the way. Palpatine sent a stab at Anakin's head, but he sidestepped and sent his elbow crashing into Palpatine's jaw. The Sith Lord dropped, his vision momentarily black, but he regained composure, only to see Anakin's fist occupying his vision, who caught the Sith Lord once again. Palpatine went stumbling as he brought his saber up to attack, but Anakin stepped past it and spun 360 degrees, his blade carving an arc from Sidious's abdomen right through to his back. Sidious's mouth and eyes went wide. He had lost. He fell to the ground and looked up at Anakin, who was standing over him triumphant. He spat out blood and proclaimed that he might have been defeated, but the galaxy will never recover from his empire, and the Sith will always return as they always have. But Anakin told him, never again. As his family, the Skywalker family will prevail and make sure the Sith remain extinct until the end of time. Anakin grouped back up with the rest of the Jedi, hugging his children and congratulating them on their victory. He turned to the rest of the Jedi and told them they had to move fast, as they all rushed out of the throne room together to the engine core and planted explosives all around and set the timer to 5 minutes. They rushed to the exit and boarded their ship to fly away as far as possible. They sent a message to the rebel forces to get as far away from the Death Star as possible, and in 5 short minutes, the explosion was glorious as the Death Star was destroyed from within, and the blast took out most of the Imperial fleet. Cheers erupted across the rebel comm system as Mon Mothma took the mic and commanded everyone to enter hyperspace to their next destination, Coruscant. Over the following hours, the rebels took over the Imperial Senate and arrested all of the high-ranking Imperial officers. Across the HoloNet, they declared that Emperor Palpatine and his Death Star has been defeated by no one other than the Chosen One, hero without fear, Anakin Skywalker, who had returned to the galaxy at last. The Rebel Council dealt with the political takeover of the Senate on Coruscant, whilst the Jedi took over the Jedi Temple. The lead members met in the council chambers: Yoda, Rancisis, Obi-Wan, Quinlan Vos, Ahsoka, and Anakin and his family. Anakin began by apologizing for the sins of his past, explaining that Palpatine manipulated him into joining him and doing his bidding, and that he's lived with the horrors of what he's done every day for the last 20 years. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka came forward and hugged Anakin. They could forgive him for what he had done. In their minds, he had redeemed himself through stopping the Emperor, and they couldn't believe he had a family, and they were all growing up. Anakin turned to Yoda and told the Grand Master that he had more work to do in undoing the damage he has done, but himself and his family are committed to the galaxy and rebuilding the Jedi Order. Yoda senses the power in Anakin, likely double his own, and his children will one day follow. He tells Anakin he is the future of the light side of the Force. The mistakes on his part are not entirely his fault. Some blame must lie on the Jedi, for the Council was the one who put Anakin by Palpatine's side. The Grand Master had 20 years to reflect on the past, and knows that the Jedi also made many mistakes, and he tells Anakin that he'd be honored if he and his family join the Jedi Council to lead the galaxy into a new golden age. Anakin accepts, and the future is looking bright. A few weeks later, the Republic Senate had re-established control around the galaxy, while the Jedi Order were helping disenfranchise worlds that were decimated by the Empire. Anakin, Padme, and their children lived together on Coruscant, while Padme took a lead role in the bureaucracy of the New Republic, where she felt at home again. She had enjoyed their time in solitude, however. Serving the galaxy was her true purpose. Meanwhile, Anakin and his children sat on the Jedi Council. They wrote up a new Jedi Code, one where attachments were allowed. However, specific training on how to deal with the accompanying emotions were necessary. Finally, the Jedi now represented the Jedi of the Old Republic, and were free from the dogma and narrow-minded views of the past. They all stood in the chamber, bowed, and took their seats, as Anakin declared that he once believed love was his weakness, and fear his strength, but he was wrong. Love is what saved him, and if the Jedi are to endure, they must never forget that truth again. The galaxy is looking bright, the Skywalker family at the forefront, and the light side of the Force will dominate for the rest of time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to check out our flash sale over at Fantasy Sabers to get our most popular sabers for the cheapest they have ever been. Don't miss out, they will never return to this price. And I'll see you all next time.